the Evolution Security Podcast. All right, you just heard Heathens off the album Heathens from Jason Bieler and the Baron von Bielski Orchestra. Man, just a killer song. And, you know, Jason is one of my favorite musicians, period. And so that was an album that just came out here in February. I've been rocking it for a while, and we have the honor of having this unique show to have Jason Bieler on with us to talk about music and all things art and music. And Jason, it's an awesome time to have you on. We appreciate you coming on and spending your time with us. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. And thanks so much for thinking of me and having me on, man.
Well, I was going through some of a few years ago. You had some albums like Where Dreams Go to Die and Birds of Prey, and I hadn't heard those. I was listening to some of the tunes. I was like, man, it would be so cool to use some of this music on the show. And I just reached out to you and asked about using some of the music, and then if you would come on, and you graciously said yes to both. So here we are. Now, I would just like to preface this, and I may kind of have a monologue, but I really want to set this up because there's a rare combination of let's just focus on guitar players, but guitar players that can sing great, play guitar great, and I hate to use the word virtuoso, but some people kind of know what that means, but the high skill level of guitar playing, and then most of all, songwriting. And those three things are rare. There's a few people I can think of besides yourself. That's Ritchie Kotzen, in the Winery Dogs these days, and Ian Thornley from Big Wreck.
Yep.
Just a sick guitar player and songwriter and singer. And then I would even put John Mayer in there too. Just a great guitar player, songwriter, and singer as well. But you kind of epitomize that to me. So I've been a big fan of yours for about 30 years now, and I'll kind of tell this story like this. So in high school, all I really cared about was playing guitar. I don't remember doing homework. I know I did it because I graduated, but I think I had 3 or 4 friends, and 2 of those were my brother and the orchestra director and music theory teacher who I hung out with at lunch. But then for some reason, I kind of hit it off with who was the homecoming queen and one of the cheerleaders, one of the most popular, most beautiful girls in school. She just happened to be a great singer and a lover of music too. And we just kind of started chatting and ended up going out on a few dates, eventually just became really good friends. But for Christmas one year, she brought me the CD. It was black and white and had 4 pictures of these guys and Saigon Kick on the cover. And so, I mean, it's pretty cool when you remember when you discovered an artist or music. I mean, I remember her giving it to me. It's weird. I don't remember many other situations like that. So that was cool. We would roll around cranking up What You Say and My Life, and then further on, when the Lizard album came out, we would float down the river cranking that up on our boombox. So, and by the way, she would get really mad at me. She's still a really great friend. So, hey, Phyllis, how you doing? She said to tell you hi, Jason.
Oh,
And
tell her thank you for turning you on to the band.
yeah, she's going to be excited to hear that, and her sister, who is an amazing singer too, will shout out to her and Marla. Both those gals were great friends and great musicians, and started this all off. So now you've continued to make great music from the days of Saigon Kick, and then again continuing to make great music. But there's a few topics on that I want to talk about, but I'm going to pass it to my brother here real quick to start us out.
Sure.
Well, Jason, again, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence on the show. I mean, it is a big deal. Not too long ago, we were blessed to have my favorite drummer, Tim Alexander of Primus, on
Oh,
the
wow. Yeah.
show.
I know Tim.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, absolutely my biggest influence. And Aaron was extremely excited about that because Tim was also
Oh
or
yeah.
is, excuse me, one of his favorite drummers. But I kind of, in the back of my mind, I was like, man, we need to have this same opportunity for Aaron. And lo and behold, one of his biggest influence and a huge influence on myself as well. I mean, I definitely had um, a huge upbringing listening to Saigon Kick, absolutely,
Oh,
from
man,
Marla
thanks.
and Phyllis. Shout out to those great friends. It's been a long time since we've seen them. Anyway, this show is absolutely about artists of different forms, of course, martial arts, self-preservation, so on and so forth, but certainly art. Miyamoto Musashi said that you should also be into other art, not just the martial art. And I think, as Aaron said, you epitomize that.
Oh, thanks.
With that said, can you give us a mini autobiography, where you're from, how you grew up, how you got into music, and then eventually started Saigon Kick? Would be a great start, buddy.
Sure. I mean, I grew up in New York. Um, and I think just music has just always been there for me. So I mean, before I could even articulate how or when, like I just remember music being on in the house, like the old AM Gold hits, and like I remember there being like a Beatles Meet the Beatles 8 track and a Fifth Dimension 8 track, and I just remember like music always made me feel something, like I mean, I don't know what it was as a person, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have friends that are like, and I'm sure we all do, that are like, they just see math and it makes sense to them. Like to me, it never makes sense, but you know, or like you're talking about martial arts, or you're talking about any kind of thing. There's certain people that can just see things and feel like they have a communication with it. And music was always that way for me from the time I was a little kid. Like I just always felt like I understood it, and you know, for a lack of better way of saying it, it just like the old Toy Story thing. You have a friend in me. Like when anything else was going on, I always felt like music was something that I could relate to and understand. And then when it's probably about oh 9 or 10, I think I was infatuated with Kiss, like everybody of my age was, and I wanted to play bass like Gene Simmons, and my mom didn't really know the difference between a bass and a guitar, and she came home with a guitar, and it's really kind of hard to say, like, when your mom's kind of, we weren't a super wealthy family, and when someone goes out of the way to get you a guitar, you just can't go like, that's not a bass. So I wound up playing guitar, which worked out okay in hindsight. Um, and then just like you said, I mean, I just instantly, like, even in a little sense, like when I was a little kid, I kind of like, everybody's got their thing in the neighborhood. One kid's a good quarterback. There was one friend who's the fastest runner. One kid could do this. Music was the one thing that always kind of came back to where I felt like, oh, wait a minute, I can do this a little bit better than anybody else in my little clique of friends. Like I could play the riff. I could learn that song, or I could, when we did a little neighborhood jam or whatever, I'd be able to figure that part out. And that just started feeding a wheel, like, of, you know, positive, that cycle of going like, wait, I give this to music. I invest my time. I practice play, which was never really practicing, but playing because I loved it so much. Then you get better. Then people notice you getting better, and that feedback kind of just creates a cycle where, it's the old story of spending, 10 hours a day in the bedroom with records and just listening to music and playing. And did that mostly through my teens. Really couldn't get in any of the bands at the time that were happening in Florida because I had moved to Florida by that time, and the really story of saying, hey, we were like the only four guys that were left in the music scene that couldn't get in any other bands. I mean, all these other bands were kind of fully functioning and happening. And it wasn't so much that we found this magical kinship as much as like, well, if we wanted to have a band, it's the four of us or nothing. We were the leftovers, the island of misfit toys, and so we put that band together, and then bit by bit, we really kind of did everything backwards. We didn't have a demo. We didn't have press photos. We just started playing and got progressively bigger in rapid kind of fashion. So like our first show was the typical band show. We had 20 people there, 30 people. And then all of a sudden it was 150, then it was 300, then it was 500, then it was 1,000. Then we were drawing like 1,500 people on multiple nights. And the next thing you know, all the labels kind of came down and swarmed, and we wound up getting the dream of, getting a record deal. But it was really backwards, in terms of how we did it. So yeah, I mean, the first real, even before Saigon Kick got officially signed, I got a call from Jeff Scott Soto, because some friend in our neighborhood right after Jeff had left Yngwie, he was trying to put a solo project together. And so this guy wanted to play bass for him and played a demo for him that I had played guitar on. And Jeff was like, well, I don't really want you to use you as a bass player, but who's the guitar player? So, this is at this point in life, Yngwie was like the king of guitar. It was Eddie Van Halen and Yngwie. There's only two guys on the planet, Randy Rhoads, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So getting a call from Jeff Scott Soto was like getting a call from Ronnie James Dio or something. To me, I was like, I couldn't believe that this guy was even calling me, and flew out to LA, and we did a little bit of work. And then as Saigon Kick was kind of growing, he brought me to Sweden for like 6 months, and I wound up playing with Marcel Jacob, who was the bass player in Rising Force, and all these Swedish guys. And that's where I really got my first professional experience. And that brings us, I guess, up to the Saigon Kick stuff.
So this brings us to something that I've often thought about you for some reason, in speaking of record contracts and record companies. So digressing a little bit, when I played locally, I would do a little bit of touring, opening up for this band called Caroline Spine. They were semi big, but I was at one of their record releases, and the guitar player was just standing there. He goes, Aaron, we're going to have to hit platinum just to break even on this record. And I've always known and thought of record contracts as basically giant loans to put out your music, and these record companies, essentially, because of what will sell, the old paradigm was, record companies essentially filtered what we all got to get exposed to. And, there was great local music here and there, but if record companies didn't think it would sell, that they didn't get signed, they didn't get distribution, radio play, etc. So in the early 90s, we had, of course, the shift that everybody knows about, especially if you're into rock guitar, you guys, Extreme, Mr. Big, all the kind of, rock bands with that kind of guitar playing. When Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and Pearl Jam came out, it's like that music got kind of shoved off to the side. And I say all that to say, but now in the past 5-10 years, I like to call it the direct democracy of music availability, that because of social media, YouTube, the internet itself, if it's good music, people find it, listen, and support those artists. So, to me, I've always just seen it as this giant paradigm shift. Now, yeah, we've still got Katy Perry's and Pink and all the big acts, and even Coldplay or someone like that still get the record companies, but a lot of the great music just isn't like that anymore, but yet you can still find the great music. Now,
I think it's all, it's a different time. I mean, I was lucky enough because when we got signed to Atlantic, like legends of A&R were still there. So like Ahmet Ertegun, the guy who founded Atlantic Records, was part of the Saigon Kick initially. And yes, it was always a business, but Ahmet was the last of that breed of entrepreneur where they would just go to a club at 2 a.m. and sign some cocktail waitress on a napkin and be like, and kind of he started that company. So back to Aretha Franklin, and he signed the Rolling Stones, and so he wasn't going to get fired, you know, like the new bosses of these labels get fired every 2 years, 3 years. They only have a window of opportunity, and it does come down to, selling music. But they don't have that kind of leeway. Like, when you look at a Pink Floyd or a Metallica, it might have been 5, 6 records in. Metallica was probably 3 records in before they really started having a major success.
Yeah.
Labels don't operate like that, anymore. But my whole thing is I just always I was lucky to be a part of the Atlantic system. I'm lucky to have the success I had. I never really gave a shit about being a rock star. I mean, it's always nice to get a table in a restaurant or something like that, but it didn't drive me. Making music drove me, and the fact that I've been able to do that my whole life and still can do it today is amazing. I think there's so many great things about, like you just said, like, the fact that some kid in his bedroom can make a song today and it can be a #1 hit in Australia tomorrow
mm-hmm.
because it's the right song at the right time. That's an amazing thing that wasn't possible before. But the labels, they get a lot of bad rap for, they invest a lot of money back in the day to break an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a personal loan. So if you sign a band and you spend $1 million to try to break that band and the world says no, that's a non-recoupable $1 million lost on that investment.
Mm-hmm.
So, no artist ever say, hey, let me give you that money back. Sorry about that. Let me. So, I mean, when it connects and you're lucky, they're investing a lot of money, and for that money, they're taking a huge chunk back. But
mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a business. I mean, I think if you do the slightest bit of research, it's obvious what it's about. And
mm-hmm.
And look, I mean, you couldn't be a big band, a real big band, especially back then, without that machinery.
Yeah,
it was impossible. Now you can.
Yeah, and so I'm thinking of 2 things here, but just a real quick maybe answer about this, not to go deep into it, but do you feel like it's really a different world where, and what I like hearing is that you have a positive take, because you're a businessman, you have a positive take on what record companies have done, but they don't seem to have that control, like I said, because of the democracy of people finding music. Do you feel like there's less control from them? I'm sorry if I'm using the incorrect.
It's always been the Wild West. So even back in the day, record companies, like, to put it in terms of, you don't, if you're going into a gunfight, someone's going to get shot. I mean, someone's going to be someone's always going to be complaining about, very rarely do you see an artist go, we failed because our record wasn't good. It's always the label sucks and the manager and the radio sucks. And, Zeppelin seemed to do okay somehow. Mm-hmm. And there's obviously timing and things, the right song, right time, all those stuff. I mean, like I said, my head's always been in making music. I know that sounds like a hokey thing to say, but I just like making music. So, and if you stay around long enough, like for me, you're going to have amazing, successful years where everyone's like, I was really lucky last year and going into this year. There's so much positive feedback about the records and all the, I got to play with a bunch of friends, and we can talk about that in a bit. But
yeah.
But then you can go years where no one's paying attention. But if that's what's driving you, you're going to be miserable. What's driving me, the best days I have in the music business is when I write something or finish something and I finish it in the studio and I hear it back for the first time. That's the biggest buzz I get. So like, that's what I really love doing, is creating stuff and making music. So I think it's easier for me if my whole world was around, going to the mall and being recognized by, a screaming throng of young women, I'd have quit, 30 years ago.
Well, Jason, if I can really add, double down on what Aaron said, it is delightful to hear you speak highly of the business itself. And I mean, we're diehard capitalists. We definitely believe in business, but also what is delightful to hear is your mindset based around it, because I think that can be a problem. I'm sure you've been exposed to possibly even some friends that their whole world was wrapped around that celebrity and not getting that recognition or trying to get that recognition. So, man, it certainly sounds like you got or have had the right mindset, in my opinion.
Man, I haven't worked a day job in my entire life. I got nothing to complain about. I mean, there's bands that are bigger. Obviously, everyone wishes they were the Beatles or Queen, or that's fantastic stuff. But to me, I've lived a life being creative, being around creative stuff. So I'm just thankful for that. I can't sit here and whine about the fact that Pearl Jam was all of a sudden hugely successful, or those were great records, great bands, and things had to shift. I mean, they always have to shift. I think what happens is any genre becomes saturated and silly at some point. Hair metal included. I mean, we weren't really a hair metal band, but whatever. We were in that, we were caught in that between, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
But, that was becoming a parody of itself. It was just, every singer had like spandex on with no shirt, and every guitar player was playing a million miles an hour, and everyone was flipping their hair, and there was like the 3 token hot chicks in the video. It became silly. Like, a lot of rap got that way too for a while, where it was just so derivative, and it was like, and then nu metal did the same thing. There's a couple great core bands that started that. I think what happens over time though, is everyone like kind of throws everything out. And then all of a sudden you see like, wait a minute, no, Def Leppard's an amazing band. And Bon Jovi wrote great songs, and those things kind of come back and stand the test of time.
That's funny that you say that, because I never really liked Bon Jovi or Def Leppard, but now when I'll hear some of those songs, like, you know what, I find myself liking this and hitting download, because like you said, it was simply great music. Now, one thing, just because you mentioned Queen, and just kind of going back to the ability of artists finding an audience. Forgive me, I don't remember his name, but when that movie Bohemian Rhapsody came out several years ago, are you familiar with that story about how they found that singer on YouTube? The
new guy, Adam. You mean the guy they're using now, Adam Lambert?
Well, I don't know if they're in a band with them now. But what
the guy that sang? You mean the guy that sang in the movie? Like, not acted in it, but he actually sang the Freddie parts.
Yes.
Yeah. He was in a Queen tribute. Roger
I heard that.
Roger Taylor actually put together this thing called Queen Extravaganza, which actually Jeff Scott Soto sang with too. And they went around the country doing like arenas, doing all the Queen music. But I believe, and I'm saying the secondhand story at best, because Jeff's really good friends with Brian May. They felt like he was too hauntingly similar to Freddie, and it would be disrespectful to the legacy to have a guy that, because he even looks eerily like Freddie when you watch those YouTube videos, and he sounds really very close. So yeah, they didn't want to do that. And I can understand that. I mean, especially, being in a band with your, family basically for that long, and having the loss, and then looking over and seeing a guy doing an imitation of very too close of a facsimile. So that's my understanding on that.
Yeah, I just found it, maybe I have it wrong, but I was watching that movie with my wife, and it's a pretty good movie too. And thinking these vocal parts, it sounds like Freddie, but these are parts I've never heard. These are different iterations, variants, of these parts. I wonder how they got this to sound like this, and apparently it was finding that.
The guy's name is Mark Martel.
Okay.
is the guy who sang, not the actor.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I think the actor sang a couple things.
Oh,
But
really?
Mark Martel did any new vocal that you heard that wasn't actually from a Queen record was Mark, I believe.
Awesome. But yeah, that's just as far as I know, testament again of how people are found on YouTube, etc. Like, kind of digressing with one of our favorite pistol instructors, who's a guy named Scott Jedlinski. He's one of the most sought after instructors in the country, but the FBI found him on YouTube. You know,
Everything, everything's on YouTube now. You know what I mean? No matter what you're looking for in your life, there's somebody on there. Not just somebody. There's 100 people on there showing you how to fix the garbage disposal, put a new roof on, fix the motor. You know,
if there's any question you have, you can probably get close to the answer, if not the perfect answer, on YouTube.
I've been thinking for a little while, kind of off topic. I wonder how huge their server rooms and buildings are to host all that data.
it's
I was thinking about
unbelievable.
that the other day.
I just feel I'm lucky because we all kind of grew up in a time where pre-cell phone, pre-internet, all that. So I remember like the very first video games, going to my aunt's house and seeing Pong, like just that.
Oh yeah,
and like that, and then Atari, and then seeing where it's come from, and then email. I memean, it wasn't even a thing. And the whole world is just like, I feel like we're living in this really amazing time, and it's moving so fast. I don't even think we realize it. It's because we're so used to technology speeding up the way it does. But it's pretty amazing. I mean, how much has changed and how fast it's moved.
So a few years ago, it was pretty cool to see you guys did a few Saigon Kick reunion tour or some performances. Was that a lot of fun? Or you just never know when guys stop playing together, how things like that go when you got a reunion like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one to ever talk negatively. I just don't. I don't find it useful myself.
Yeah.
But for me, it was not a pursuit that I really enjoyed as much as I always equate it to, like, it's like, you had a girlfriend 20 years ago and you happen to be at a convention somewhere and you see her.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, there she is. Oh, this is terrible. And the breakup was really ugly.
Yeah.
But she comes up to you and you say, hey, and she's like, wait, why don't we just, get a bite to eat or something and just talk and see what life is like. And you're sitting there with her and you're like, oh my God, she's amazing. Like, what possibly could have gone wrong? Because, like, she's just so personable and everything's amazing. And then all of a sudden she says one thing and you're like, oh, there it is. It all comes flooding back and you realize, like, that's a lot like being in a band. You know what I mean? It sounds like a good idea, and then you get together in a few seconds, everybody kind of reverts back to those things, and wasn't for me.
That I figured that would be the situation, but I love how you put that. Well, I'll tell you real quick, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break to actually listen to one of our sponsors, and we'll come back.
Let's take a minute to talk about our sponsor, Origin. Origin is growing and expanding exponentially, making all their products in the USA without compromise. Of course, they make the best jiu-jitsu gis on the planet, no question. But they have products for the everyday person. Check out their 100-kilo hoodies. I've been wearing my Path hoodie almost nonstop, and Aaron loves his new zip-up version of the kilo hoodie. Both are unparalleled in warmth, stitching, and quality. Need blue jeans? Check out the Delta 68 jeans. Strong yet soft and super stretchy. Made of a cotton poly spandex blend, which is light and stays cool and dry. These jeans are named after the brave Mekong Delta Navy SEALs who traded their issue uniform pants for tougher denim blue jeans to get the mission done. Origin has also disrupted the hunting industry with their new line of nano-wool base layers, body lock, stow jackets, and their Nova Lock insulated jackets, all in the new innovative Raptor camo. If you need jiu-jitsu gis, Jocko supplements, or any of the products mentioned, Go to our show notes and click on the affiliate link and use EvoSec10 at checkout. Now back to the show.
Take the bad sedatives and everyone will feel alright. It's an ancient remedy like sugar water laced with spite. 100 million years ago, depression killed the dinosaurs. 100 million years ago, some fish crawled up onto the shore.
All right, that was another cool song by Jason Bieler. That song is called Bear Sedatives off of Heathens. So, Jason, you mentioned earlier having the fortunate situation to have some people getting, into some of your new music lately and getting to go out and do some performances. And, why don't you tell us about what you've been up to there? And I would like to know if there's any place I can come see you play. I know my wife wants to come see you guys sometime.
For sure. I mean, well, the last record, when I started doing that, my concept was to get a bunch of people I love and respect and have them kind of contribute to the record in a way. So I was really lucky. I had everybody from Butch Walker, Clint Lowry from Seven Dust, Bumblefoot, Devin Townsend, David Ellefson, Jeff Scott Soto. I'm sure I'm forgetting Kyle Sanders from Hell Yeah, Benji Webb from Skindred, and just started hanging out with all my different friends and making music, and it's been great. And after that record came out, Jeff Scott Soto and I started to do an acoustic kind of show together, story, almost comedy kind of, a little bit of chaos actually. And we would have special guests come up with us different places. So whether it's Todd LaTorre from Queensryche would come up when he's around, or we'd have Todd Kearns from Slash's band would come up and do some songs with us. And so we're just doing this all over the country, and it's been growing steadily, and it's been a lot of fun, especially being with my friend that I've known that long. And that's been growing. We're doing the Monsters of Rock cruise together and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're getting ready to tour for the new record, probably towards the end of the year, doing a bunch of dates, full band dates to support the new record, hopefully by fall.
Oh, rock on. So yeah, we'll have to stay on top of that because back in the day when Saigon Kick was out, I always wanted to go see you guys play and just were never close enough. So, but now that I've got a car to drive or can get on a plane, find where you're going to play. Where do you like to play, man? What
We've been
cities
playing
do you?
everywhere, man. So we just played Nashville for the first time, Jeff and I. That was awesome. We sold that out, City Winery in Nashville. New York, LA, we just played a couple weeks back. We just did Orlando last weekend, Chicago, Cleveland. We've been playing all over the country. So Boca, Tampa, Atlanta, been bouncing around all over the place. And it's kind of become this, taken on its own life. So it's been a lot of fun doing that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, we will certainly, it's one of these things where when you meet somebody virtually and especially somebody like yourself that was such a huge influence on us as younger men, and I'm going to digress a second myself. And, one of the things that I was thinking about today was when Water came out, and at first we're like, this is going to be a little different with Jason singing. But man, I mean, from that time forward, man, Water was like an anthem album around, I don't know, for at least a year.
Cool.
And Aaron, remember when we added One Step Closer into our rotation in one of our bands?
Oh yeah. Jason, in some of our cover bands that we had, we definitely played some Saigon Kick. I remember playing Hostile Youth a gazillion times. One Step Closer for sure. Yeah, that's a good point. It's funny. I remember when I picked up Water. I feel like a stalker here, Jason.
No worries, man.
But I do remember. It's just because it just so happened I was going on a big trip and Water dropped, and I bought it in an airport record store or airport store. But Eric, what else do you have, buddy?
Well, I think it's a good time. You've been talking about touring and whatnot, and our understanding is that you're into fitness. I mean, from what I recall, it seems like you do take real good care of yourself. Of course, being a self-protection, self-preservation show, strength and conditioning is one of the most important factors of both self-defense and longevity, right? Um, Aaron and I both have awesome home gyms. Do you happen to have a home gym? And what do you do on the road to stay fit? We'll just ask those two questions.
Well, I mean, I do have a ton of stuff at home that I work out with. I mean, I'm fortunate. I live in a really cool area, so we have a lot of trail running. So I try to
Nice.
run like 3 to 4 miles in the trails, like 2, 3 times a week.
Nice.
Not at any speed. My wife's like a marathon runner and half marathon runner, and she's always like, "Come run with me, Matt." I can't stand running with anybody. I just want to be by myself in the woods at my speed, because anybody who passes me is an idiot, and anyone who's slower than me is a moron. That's not the right mentality to run with a group of people. I also got in playing ice hockey. My son played travel hockey from the time he was 6. So when he started doing that, I was lucky enough to be around a lot of NHL players, a lot of their strength and conditioning coaches. And so I still play ice hockey, try to play at least 2, 3 times a week. It's not so much about being ripped or anything like that, but I like the idea of, being functionally able to fall down and get back up. And,
Nice.
also,
Absolutely.
when you're moving a lot and you're traveling and your schedules are shifting, it's just important to maintain like a baseline of, health. It's not that it's so much physically demanding, but it's really easy to be eating hamburgers at 2 in the morning and sleeping wrong. And then the next thing you know, you're trying to make up sleep so you're not going to the gym or running. And then, it just becomes this really bad cycle of habits. So, both Jeff and I try to at least make sure we're running or walking, a bunch, and then weightlifting and when we can. And, again, not that I'm going to be taking my shirt off running down the beach anytime soon, but
Not anymore here either.
but just about having that strength and ability to stay functional. And for me, I find it's like really become a mental thing more than even a physical thing. Like running, and especially playing ice hockey, because I play with a lot of really good players, far better than me, and you kind of go into survival mode, so your brain clears entirely because there's so much to think about in terms of balance, core, eye-hand coordination, not even inadvertently running into somebody else while you're playing. That hour and a half you're playing, you're not thinking, I got to call this idiot back. That's where when I'm running, I can still think about life and things I have to do or goals. I find the ice hockey is like the most meditative part of the day for me, where it's just there's nothing I'm thinking about other than that exact in the moment. Try not to break my neck.
Very cool. Awesome answer. It certainly sounds like that you've got very much sustainable workout programs and a way to, like you said, a cerebral release that you have when you're playing hockey. For me and myself, Aaron and I, jiu-jitsu is that for us. And again, the home gym, I just had a workout just a little bit earlier before coming on. I still love that home gym for certain.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's important, I think, especially as you get older. The one good thing about I always tell my son, it's like I'm not getting faster, but I still got man strength.
Yep.
And you can still, most of your real. I mean, I'm friends with the guys that are like the heads of security for Metallica, and they're man mountains, and they're power lifters, and they're so strong. But they don't even feel like they're hitting their stride until they're in their mid 40s. In terms of their actual like just raw ability to move and lift stuff. So it's kind of inspiring to see those kind of guys. And I play hockey sometimes with these guys that are in their 70s, that are just beasts, and it just gives you a lot of like, you're like, wow, these guys are hitting, taking hits, falling down, getting up, it just gives you a good mindset.
Well, staying fit is definitely possible. Staying strong in your later years is definitely possible. I mean, to my understanding, Leonidas back at Thermopylae was in his 50s or 60s when he led that battle. So yeah, I mean that's a good example. Well, awesome.
Well, and Eric, it brings up the concept, of course, that Larry Lindemann talks about, one of our mentors, that it's not about lifespan, that it's about health span.
Yeah, I always love that. Yep.
And Jason, it sounds like you're just with that, because I haven't, confessing to our audience knows me and how little I've been into weightlifting until now, but now I'm just, I finally realized that getting close to 50, I really needed to start that, so it would again keep me healthy and like you said, be able to fall down and not have a major problem. That's a good way to put it.
You know, and then anytime I'm feeling bad about myself, you know, I'll just listen to a little bit of that David Goggins story, and I'm like, all right, I'm just a wuss.
David Goggin is awesome.
Yeah.
Fill me in real quick.
So David Goggin, Aaron, was a Navy SEAL, but before he was a Navy SEAL, I believe, Jason, if you know this and I'm incorrect, I believe he was in the Air Force, and he was not in very good shape as an airman.
Yeah, he like the whole story. He lost everything and became like a real fat guy. He was an exterminator for a while, and then decided at some point he saw an ad for the Navy SEALs, and was like, went and saw a recruiter. And the first couple of recruiters were like, "You're never gonna get out." And one recruiter said, "Well, I'll tell you what, if you can lose 70 pounds in like 3 or 4, whatever, some ridiculous time span, we'll give you a shot." And he went through it and went through Hell Week, and then like broke his knee or something. I mean, it's like he went through Hell Week 3 times.
Yep.
Which I can't even imagine going through Hell Hour, let alone Hell Week. And just he's become an ultra runner since then. This is one of those guys that runs like 150-mile races, and just nonstop stories of it's nothing I would aspire to do myself. But if you ever feel like, oh, I can't get up to go work out, or I can't, you just hear a couple of those stories like, man, I have no reason not to. You finish Hell Week on broken shins.
Yeah, he absolutely is a inspiration to anybody that may need a little bit of, like Jocko says, I don't know if you know Jocko Willink or not, but Jocko talks about it's not motivation as much as it's just simply the discipline of doing it. And David Goggin definitely can encourage your discipline for certain, because that guy is a beast, and definitely can encourage you to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah, sure. Good example, Jason. See, again, we had you on for music, but I guarantee our audience members are enjoying these discussions as well. You're bringing some awesome content, buddy.
Cool, man.
Well, so let's get back to some music here. And I loved the way that you described music when you were a kid, how it felt, right? Because, that was the same way with us. I remember as a kid hearing songs on movies and stuff and getting like almost teary-eyed because it was so cool.
Right.
And I just describe it as this visceral need to crank the music up in your stereo or in your headphones or stereo in your car. And again, your style of songwriting, playing, the vocal melodies are always what get me. And I know, not even knowing you, that's just a huge part of what you're about. So it would really be cool to kind of get a story about how your songwriting process, recording. I know this day and age with Pro Tools and Logic, you probably do the majority of your recording sitting right there. I'm just going to assume, and then of course the producing aspect, mixing, and I mean, we can get as nerdy as we want.
Oh yeah.
So,
I mean, for me, the first and foremost thing is like, I always loved all kinds of music. So I was never like a metalhead or, or a new wave or punk, or, I mean, I love great punk songs. I love great new wave songs. I love great metal songs. I love jazz. I love classical music. I mean, it's just, I think it was Miles Davis said there's 2 types of music, good and the other kind.
Mhm.
and that is always rang true to me. Like, so I've always loved music, and I think I like music too that like kind of surprises me, especially the older I get. Like, I don't want to know. Like, a lot of times with pop music, you kind of know what's going to happen already. You know what I mean? You kind
Yeah,
of already
yeah,
sense like,
yeah.
not that it's not. I mean, I love Katy Perry, love Lizzo, love John Mayer, love the Harry Styles. Those songs are great songs. But I do seek out more like to balance some of the pop stuff. I love to be surprised. So whether that's like Zappa or some of the prog stuff, or especially the jazz stuff, like I love bending my ear and forcing myself to, I kind of consider jazz like sushi. Like, the first time I had sushi, I was like, this is really bizarre. This is so strange. Like, it's not
Love
anything
sushi.
else. I grew up macaroni and cheese and hot dogs. So the idea as a kid of eating sushi was insane. But then I tried it. I was like, okay, I liked it. And then a little more. And now it's my favorite food by far. And I can go down any rabbit hole and do anything. I love it. Jazz
I
is kind
love
of
it
like
too.
that. You have to work. It's a two-way street. You can't just passively become a fan. You have to invest in actually paying attention to what's going on and why it's happening. And then it rewards you. It doesn't just reward you for turning it on. Um, so that's in terms of my approach to all that stuff has always been that way. And then writing's always been a weird thing for me. It's even with this last record, like, until it's all done and I hear it back, it's like almost like I'm hearing it. It's not a spiritual thing or some kind of weird thing. It's just, it all comes out of me at one time. Like, the lyrics, the melodies, generally speaking, it's kind of like taking dictation, not from outside, but like the ideas are kind of all coming out, and my process is to try to get it down, which makes me a terrible collaborator. Because if I'm in a room with somebody and I'm trying to get it out, and they're like, we could put a tambourine, I'm like ready to chokehold. Like, I just, don't talk to me. Like, I'm. It's all coming in one chunk. And even like on this last record, until I was putting all the lyrics together for the art, to assemble all the artwork, and my wife was proofreading some stuff, and she's like, "Man, you have a problem. You should probably go talk to somebody. These lyrics are horrible." And so I start reading them, like, "Oh man, that is pretty twisted." I don't even realize that I'm doing it in any real way, and I'm almost afraid of like trying to figure out how it's happening, because it's always been there for me, and I feel like I'm going to scare it off if like I don't want to analyze it. I don't want to know why, but I've always just been able to write, kind of in these complete chunks of music.
Well, can I add something to that, Jason? Because I, being a consumer and a listener of your awesome music, I think when I hear you describe that, to me, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your rear, I just think that it sounds to me like you do have a gift, and you may not want to chase it off. I mean, to me, it certainly sounds like you were given a gift there. Aaron, your thoughts on
Well,
here, and Jason.
I'm glad that you brought the way you say that, Eric, because a lot of people will say there's not natural talent. I think I kind of agree with that, but I think it's where talent comes from is aptitude and intelligence, and for one thing, being able to recognize and regurgitate patterns really fast and process that stuff. So I still think that artists like you and some of the great artists we all love to hear have that natural aptitude. What do you think about that? And of course, you as a music fan, all the people you're influenced by, does that ring true to you?
I mean, I don't. I mean, I get. Everyone's got their own thing. I mean, so I mean, it's I'm in. I guess no one's interested in how the sausage is made. I mean, or I shouldn't say that. It's not as important as do you like the sausage? You know what I mean? It's like, so one person might take 6 weeks to do something that might have taken Prince 2 seconds to do. At the end of the day, Bowie might have done it this way, and Elton John does it this way, and I think at the end of the day, it's like you said originally, is like, if that music touches you, whether it's Harry Styles or Miles Davis, that's its highest purpose. is to be there for somebody, to engage with somebody and make that thing. So, everybody's got their own thing, man. It may take Beyonce 75 writers and 25 producers, but millions of people are moved by that. And that's a special thing.
Well, so then maybe a good time before we actually, because I want to hear a little bit about your actual recording process.
Sure.
So that brings up a good time to say, so who are your current influences or what you're really into these days? I'm sure you've mentioned them, but
I mean, I listen to literally everything. So, I mean, if you went through my playlist, you'd be like, this guy's got serious issues and needs to be put in a home. Because, I mean, I listen to Meshuggah, to Barry Manilow, to Bjork, to Tom Waits, to Bruce Springsteen, to Ecstasy, to I mean, Peter Gabriel,
Oh yeah.
to Lizzo, to Neil Sedaka, um, Tom Petty, Prince, some of the great R&B stuff, Queen, the Beatles, obviously, AM Gold hits, Christopher Cross, to Metallica, to Pantera. It's just that I just love great stuff.
just simply, like you said, good music.
If it, and that's all subjective, it's like, that's the stuff that moves me. Like I'll pursue any of it. Like I have people always ask me like, what's your guilty pleasure? I'm like, I have no guilt. If I like it, I like it. I'm playing it full blast and I'll have people leave the room. I don't care. I mean, if I am a fan, I'm getting in the pit at the Barry Manilow show and throwing elbows. I mean, I like it. I'm not, the great songs, like you said, are great songs. And even we just lost Burt Bacharach, great composer of all. And until you sit there as any musician, even if you're not like a fan per se of that, when you sit there and realize like all the songs that guy wrote that you know the melodies from, like as soon as you hear the choruses, you're like, oh, I know that. I know that. I know that. It's like there's a lot of really super talented, amazing stuff to dive into.
Well, Jason, you mentioned Prince, and I have to admit, when Prince passed, I was real surprised how much that affected me, and I think Aaron can agree to that.
Yep.
But one of the things that stood out for me, obviously, Prince was an amazing musician. I mean, he could play all the instruments, but something that really stuck out to me one time. And I'm not necessarily an Oprah fan, but one time I saw that he was on there, and my wife and I sit and watched it. And he sit down and only played maybe a bar or two of Purple Rain on the piano. And I was just flabbergasted about hearing that. And I was like, man, why did he not ever put that down in a recording? I don't know. Did you guys ever hear that? I mean, it was just like 2 bars.
No, but I mean, like it doesn't. I mean, I was a massive fan. I know a ton of people that work with him, and there's so many endless Prince stories of how unbelievably talented and ridiculous he was. And I bought all these bootlegs of him. Like he would literally go play a 3-hour arena show, then rent a club in town, wherever the high end club was, and go there and play another 2-hour set that night. Then play a show the next day, and just like was like an endless machine of like just creativity and like I said, I know some of the engineers that worked with him and some of the musicians that had played with stuff and I think we actually were on tour with Extreme. I'm sorry, my chair's falling here. We were on tour with Extreme, and Nuno, myself, Gary Sharon, and a couple of guys from our band, whatever, decided we were going to fly it because he was playing a small theater tour. So this has been in '93, something like that. And I remember sitting there and feeling like we flew to see the show, and we're watching the show, and Prince comes out and does what Prince always does, and Nuno and I were just saying, like I felt like okay, we all play basketball, but that's Michael Jordan. That's LeBron James. Like I mean, technically we're playing the same thing, but we're not playing the same thing. I mean, it's just at a level of just where you just sit back and go, that's a generational talent.
Amazing. Well, so this is some more nerd stuff. So assuming is my assumption correct that you do? I see your mic stand over there. Of course, your PRS there in the background. Is that where you do a lot of your recording? And I'm assuming Pro Tools
This is kind of my office kind of. So I have instruments and guitars and amps and everything sitting in here, but I have an actual full studio
Oh, cool.
that I use too. But yeah, I do 90% of everything is all done digitally. With a bunch of cool amps and mics. I mean, for a long time when I ran the label, we had a really phenomenal studio in Florida. And when we moved, I took all the stuff I really wanted. So all the cool EQs and mic pre's and, some of those mics, but I still find myself, keeping it real simple. Right now, my whole thing is like we talked about is like, I don't want to get bogged down in having to find things when I'm writing and having to switch things over or go for different things. I want to be able to instantly move seamlessly as quickly as possible to get the songs out. In the past, I found myself, starting to write a song and then working on a snare reverb and then, oh, that could be like this. And then wait, if I do this gate and the reflect, and then I forgot what song I was writing by the time the snare sounded amazing, but there was no song. So I've really kind of tried to stay quick to, getting the process, a lot of the core of it down as quickly as possible. And then been collaborating with people all around the world. So that's been kind of a neat thing too, because everybody's got home studios now. And I find that me not being there, I worked with amazing musicians. So that's the first thing. You just can't do it with anybody. But, giving something to Bumblefoot and saying, hey, you're going to get something amazing back. Mm-hmm. And also I find like the weird, I mean, we're musicians, so you guys know this. Like you're in a room, you're trying to work out a part and the bass player or the guitar player kind of looks at you and goes like, it makes a face or something goes off. You're like, oh, before you even get to work your part all the way through and really feel like you got it, you can kind of sense the room change and the moods. And so you're never getting the best out of people. And I'm as guilty of doing that to people as anybody. So it's been really great to give music my vision, hand it to Bumblefoot or Marco Miniman, just played on a track on the new record. He plays with the Aristocrats. I don't know if you know who he is, but he is just a freak of freak drummers, like unbelievable.
You're talking about with Guthrie Govan?
Yeah, he's Guthrie's drummer. Mm-hmm. So he played on a track and like, just when you get the tracks back, you're just like, oh my God,
So Jason, what you're saying is that you're doing a lot of stuff in your home studio, and then you guys are passing tracks back and forth for the collaboration, correct?
Yep.
Now, Aaron and I obviously are not you guys, but that's been an amazing part of this podcast. Is that Aaron and I do that same thing? Aaron will come up with a part and send me something, or vice versa. And Aaron and I getting to record songs together and even just play with stuff from, 1,800 miles away now. It used to be a longer distance, but it's amazing. It sounds like what you do, but just on a different scale.
And when you send something now, you fully developed your thought on it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So you're able to present at least, here's my full vision of what this should be. And then when you're critiquing it or not, you still feel like you weren't getting shut down before you had a chance to really come up with the part. So it's been great.
So you said you're still running amps and everything, because I've seen you use, I think you've used fractals quite a bit too, or maybe just for convenience, or do I have that wrong?
I've used them a couple times live. I have used them on some recordings for sure. I'm using neural DSP stuff now, a thing called the Quad Cortex.
Oh yeah.
Which is awesome. I have some heads from Victory that I love. They make some. Kotzen's another guy who uses the Victory stuff.
Yep.
Those are amazing. So
you're still using good old tube amps and speakers and mic pre's and.
I use whatever makes sense. I'm not married to anything. I'm not a guy who says this sounds better. I tell you, Neural DSP makes plugins that go right inside, Logic or Pro Tools that are unreal. Mm-hmm. They sound great. And they do all kinds of cool stuff that would take forever to do with amps. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of neat now. The modeling is getting so fantastic. And then the flexibility, like if you record a guitar sound in the studio and you have the mic set up and then you move them and then you try to get back and do that, it never comes back the way it was supposed to, and then everything's changed. And so there's a lot of virtue to keeping stuff sometimes in that digital realm too.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, you move a microphone a quarter inch, and you just listen to the EQ curve change. It's pretty wild.
I had a Neve console, which was an amazing sounding console. I loved it, but I mean that thing never sounded the same. I mean,
Interesting.
depending on the humidity in the room, some days the console was warmer, some days it was colder. So even if you set everything exactly the way it was set the day before, you'd come in and that mix would sound different. It was like just the way
Dang.
it operated. And that's kind of cool, but not necessarily when you're trying to move fast. You know what I mean? You're trying to, now with, when you keep everything in the box, the kind of cool thing about that is I can go from mixing one song to tracking a vocal to doing a guitar part on another song seamlessly and never have to worry about, losing the, losing settings or whatever. Because even in a great SSL studio, I don't care what you do with those physical EQs, things just don't come exactly back. They come close, but they never come back exactly the way they were.
So, but you are saying though that when you're recording at home, you are using modeling, or are you still using
a combination?
amps?
A combination.
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't have anything real fancy, but at the same time, I use a lot of Waves plugins. Mm-hmm. Like I recently got a plug-in that's supposed to be the reverb chambers at Abbey Road.
Yep, I have that one.
Oh, do you?
Yep.
Pretty cool. It takes me a while sometimes to figure out why I'm distorting it. Where's my reverb? It's a little odd, but it's pretty dang cool to sit there and there's presets that move the mics around, move the pillars around. Pretty dang cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that the technology at this point, and it's only going to get better by the minute, is, surpassed. I don't think it's a question of is it better or can you hear it? It's a matter of what tool do you like using and what's giving you the most creative freedom. And I don't think there's a reason not to use digital, unless you personally like a certain, that's a great reason. If you want to use this particular head and that makes you happy, that's great. But there's not like sonically digital doesn't sound like. I mean, a great engineer. I've done it in my studio in the past. I've had it because I had 24-track analog machines, and we had Pro Tools machines, and this is going back 10 years ago. I mean, with a great engineer recording it, I couldn't tell you. I could tell you maybe this sounds different than that a little bit, but not this is the analog versus this is the digital recordings, or that's me though.
Cool.
Well, so and then to the final aspect. Well, one of the final aspects, especially of recording. Do you do all the mixing and straight on to? Do you do the mastering yourself too?
No, I mix everything myself. So the whole all the records are mixed by me. And I used a mastering engineer named Scott Craggs, who's amazing. So I like to do that just because it's an extra set of ears to make sure, like, okay, the bass, the bottom end on this is not where it's supposed to be, or, he's got a great setup where he can really technically just make sure everything's kind of where it's supposed to be. And then also make sure that all the songs are of a certain level together, because, you can master one song that sounds great, but then the next song that you do is lower or not as dynamically this way or whatever. So he kind of gives the whole record a real nice balance to it.
Cool.
Awesome. Eric, you have any questions?
What's that, buddy? I'm just you and Jason know a lot more about that stuff than I do. I understand some of it because we do recordings together, but I'm learning a lot just listening to you guys talk about it.
Well, Jason, so as we're getting close to the end here, we as the guitar player, you can see a handful of my, as you said, weapons earlier. So what kind of guitars are you into these days? I've seen you with the PRSs, but I've got one of my old PRSs right there.
I've been using a Fender Strat a lot lately, which is in one of the cases back there. The PRS NF3 I loved just because the pickups specifically, they did these narrow field pickups that I just personally love. Yeah, I'm not too precious on guitars. I'm a writing, more than anything, if I have extra guitars, it's just because I want to have things in different tunings more than like, oh, I need to have this or that or the other thing. But yeah, I mean, I kind of always have been more of that's a tool than a collector's piece for me.
You're kind of bringing up one of my good friends, a guy named Eric Gillette that plays in a couple of bands with Mike Portnoy. And I mean, he really is John Petrucci's doppelganger. That's how he got a gig with Neil Morris and playing with Mike Portnoy, as he won some guitar contest playing this rendition of John Petrucci's song or something perfect. But he's the same way. I've been in rehearsals with him, and his guitar's out of tune. Like, hey, dude, you want to tune that guitar? And no, man, it's fine. And he's the same way. I am a guitar nerd. I've got 6 completely one-off guitars made by a guy named Saul Cole in Portland, Oregon. But that's the hobby side of it to me, is the gear. It's just fun. I mean, since I was 15 years old, I was into Metallica. They're the reason why I play guitar. So I would, sit up at night and dream about getting an ESP guitar and a Mesa Boogie amp, and that would change my life forever, and then, just progressing through life, it's just been that same way. Okay, what do I want now?
It's a never-ending pursuit.
Yes. Well, we're getting to a good point in the show to go ahead and say goodbye. But before we do that, could you kind of give us an idea of some upcoming events? I know you've got a new record coming out. You talked about your tours, but coming up, but also where people can find you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're doing the Monsters of Rock cruise coming up. The full record will be coming out April 14th. It's called Postcards from the Asylum. It's got 15 songs on it. We just did Bandcamp pre-order for double red vinyl. We did specifically for those people who've been so supportive of what I'm doing. Then we're doing a limited edition of yellow vinyl, which will be for like all the indie retailers and stuff like that. And then it'll switch to black vinyl. But I'm excited about the record coming out, and yeah, just staying busy. And in terms of where you can find me, I'm in social media. Everything's pretty much Jason Bieler on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I think that's all I am. Yeah, pretty much the main ones. I haven't gotten myself involved in TikTok yet, so I don't think I will.
I would avoid it.
So I don't know that I have any kind of viral dance moves that'll really behoove my my viral explosion on the format. But yeah, so I mean that's basically the overview.
Well, and Jason, I'll throw all that in our show notes as well.
Cool,
for certain.
Well, thanks so much, Jason. This has been a blast for us. For people like you to spend time with us, we wouldn't have a show with all the guests that we have without the guests that we have, and it's a labor of love that we put on. But I mean, it's amazing who we get to have conversations with, and this is no exception.
Man, I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me, and like I said, good conversations are always fun to have, man. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to spend some time.
Most assuredly, Jason, it's been an honor for both of us. And I'll just say, for both Aaron and I, if you're ever I'm in North Carolina and Aaron's in Tulsa or Jinx area, if you're ever in either one of our areas, just let us know, and we'd be glad to take you out and take you to the range if you're interested in doing any of that, or even any of the jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. Just let us know.
Oh, for sure, man. I appreciate the offer.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to play a song as we're going out here. It's the title track from Birds of Prey, and this shows your versatility. That's why I want to play this one, Jason.
Thank you very much, guys.
Life is like paving with with electric eels, 1,000 pages.